Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the September 12th meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the August 15th meeting. The minutes are in your packet. Are there any questions or comments regarding the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval? We have a motion second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. Next up is the consent docket. 23 items on the consent docket today. Several plans and specifications to be advertised, a number of change orders, and a couple of contract awards, a lot of change orders and amendments, and several easements, and a few other miscellaneous items. Are there any items on the consent docket that anyone would like to poll for individual consideration? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent docket? Motion is second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. Item 4 is a concurrence docket. There's one item on the concurrence docket, and it does not involve any Ogwood funds. Is there a motion to approve the item on the concurrence docket? We have a motion and a second.
Trustee Stonesucker.
And it passes. Item 5 is an emergency contract. We need 4 affirmative votes to pass it. It is an emergency contract for a sanitary sewer project at 30 Northwest 33rd in Drexel. And another one at Northwest Expressway, East Meridian. Are there any questions regarding the concurrence or the emergency contracts? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval? And it passes unanimously. Items from trustees? I'm sorry. Items for individual consideration. You're correct. I'm sorry. I was moving around pretty fast there. 6A is a item to receive the engineering report from CP&Y, doing business as STV Infrastructure, and authorize negotiations of amendment of the engineering contract, project ST-154 wastewater treatment plant, biosolids and odor management for Deer Creek wastewater treatment facility.
Mr. Chairman, we have Will Higgins here to speak on this item.
I'm here to take any questions. We brought the recommended short-term improvements to the trust, I believe earlier this year, proceeded with the engineering report design for 30%, and we finalized the components that we're going to move forward and just bringing that report to the trust before we proceed with detailed design.
Okay, and will remind me exactly what the major components are?
It's for biosolids and odor control.
Right.
This is at Deer Creek plant. We're going to be making some improvements to the dewatering solids conveyor. We're going to be covering the solids, the sludge stacking pad at the treatment plant to assist with odor control, and also improving the vaporization system around it. We're going to be adding a chemical feed, peroxide feed, to assist with odor control within the solids processing process. Sorry to use that twice. We're also going to be making improvements to biological trickling filter to assist with odor. And there's some other improvements at the sludge holding tank to assist with mixing, which in turn should assist with odor control at the plant.
All right. Are there any questions from the trustees? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Please vote. It passes unanimously. Item 6B is an amendment number 11 to the awards contract associated with the United States of America for the municipalization of the water and wastewater systems at Tinker Air Force Base, retroactive to November 1st, 2022. Mr. Bryan?
Mr. Chairman, these are price adjustments. The original contract had a base fee, and every year we do an evaluation to see where we are in relation to cost. As you're aware, the government pays the full cost of O&M and the repairs out at Tinker Air Force Base. So we just do a true-up every year, and that's what this one's for.
Very good. Any questions? Is there a motion to approve the amendment? And it passes unanimously. Item 12 is items from trustees now. Any comments from the trustees? Still seeing none, we'll move on to item number 8, which is the general manager's report. Mr. Browning.
Mr. Chairman, we have a couple of presentations. The first one is the status report of South Canadian Wastewater Treatment Plant construction. Will is going to give us an update on that item.
So we brought, I think it was last July, the approval for the construction award. So it's been a little over a year. They've started moving a lot of dirt and making progress, so we wanted to update the trust and plan to do so approximately quarterly moving forward. I'll give the first one, and then later reports I'll have Joy Cote, the project manager, give them. So just a reminder of the overall project, the main drivers being the existing treatment plant reaching the end of its useful life. We want to increase the treatment capacity of the plant from 6 MGD to 8.66 MGD. There's some additional, more stringent regulatory requirements on the discharge, and then we're also going to be enhancing the overall treatment capabilities of the plant. To provide just a brief overview, this is the way the plant currently looked as of around August of last year. And I'm not going to go over every single component, but just to give you an idea that it's a major overhaul of the plant itself. So that just shows you all the new treatment processes and buildings. And this kind of gives you, I think this was from about 2 or 3 months ago from Google Earth, kind of shows you that they've already started moving dirt, and you can see, I don't know if I can point, if it'll show right here, the future aeration basins are already kind of doing ground improvements there and then making progress on headworks at this area. So that's kind of a general overview. And just a reminder, the engineer is CP&Y, now doing business as STV. The contractor is Crossland Heavy, and after making the value engineering adjustments, the total construction cost is estimated over just over $191 million. The project is going to last about 1,600 days. It's right at, I think, close to 5 years. We awarded the project in July. They started last August, and the phase 1 milestone, which is in the contract, really coincides with actually bringing the new treatment processes online and being able to take effluent to the new discharge point. And the phase 2 coincides with that decommissioning and demolishing all the processes that are going to be abandoned. So the real major milestones that first phase, where we actually bring the new treatment plant as it will be online. So just a general update as of the first week of September through 12 pay applications. Had about $42 million so far in progress payments, and we're tracking in terms of completion percent in dollars and completion percent in time overall. So the project's moving forward pretty well. We'll go through some pictures. This just shows the Headworks facility. On the bottom right is actually inside rendering, which will be in the future. This is actually down low, kind of where flow will be coming through, coming through this basin. This is
that a foundation for a bar screen?
this here.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's a flow. It'll be a flow-through box. On this side, there's the influent channel, and then there's two main primary channels. And bar screens, I believe, will be located here and pull up. This is installation of auger cast pile, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a foundation, deep foundation improvement. So they just drill a hole, put some rebar, and then shake down some concrete. And here's just kind of an open trench area, them installing a new T-based manhole on the effluent line. Just working on here. This is an influent meter vault, just forming it up, getting ready to pour. And then this is headworks kind of coming up out of the ground. They actually had poured concrete, and they were doing leakage testing as of a couple weeks ago. So should be moving along pretty well, the headworks. Here just shows the aeration basins. I showed it on the aerial. So they had to do some preload of around 6 months, and now they're actually proceeding with the rest of the ground improvements. And you can see here they're starting to pour concrete slabs. This is the future administration building. On the right just shows a rendering that was prepared during design, and this just shows they've got the slab or the foundation poured, and they're starting to bring the masonry up out of the ground. So this will be kind of neat as we move forward, just kind of be able to show you how it compares to what we had in the design renderings. These are the future clarifiers, really just earthwork at this point. They had prepped the area, got it loaded to stabilize the ground from settling before they actually started pouring foundations. Primary electrical feed to the plant is going to be coming in. So this is just the new duct bank and where a lot of the gear is going to be located. This is for the new disinfection building. It's really at this point just kind of ground improvements, getting ready to pour the grade beams, and they've done some installation of some piles in this area to provide additional support. And then this just was an overall view. I just want to thank Crossland and CPNY, or STV. So Crossland provided a lot of the aerial drone type photos, and then CPNY, STV provided a lot of the first person point of view of actual construction. So with that, if there's any questions or.
I don't think I've ever been involved in a construction project that takes 5 years.
It's a long one.
All right. Other questions? Thank you, Will.
Thanks, Will. Next item is status report on the second Atoka pipeline. Larry Hare is here to give us an update.
Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good. Out of the 9 pipeline projects and 3 pump station projects, I currently have about 43 miles in construction out of a total of 98.6 miles of pipeline. I don't have any pump station projects under construction as of yet. Going through roughly through each project, WC 871, which is from Pump Station O to Colgate, I've got about 14 miles of pipeline. The contractor's Oscar Renda, and I've got about a quarter of it installed. For WC 873, I've got about 9.6 miles of pipeline. We expect completion on that in 2025, and I have about 1,100 feet of pipe on site. WC 874 from Ada to the Canadian River is about 8.8 miles. I have about 41.4% installed in the ground. 875, which is the crossing across the Canadian River, where we're going underneath the river with a 72-inch and a 60-inch line. I have about 77.3% complete. All of the new 72-inch is installed under the river. 877 from the Conoway Pump Station to just west of State Highway 3 West is about a 10-mile stretch. We expect the completion to be in July of 2025. The lay schedule is currently being developed in order to start laying the pipe. We recently received the lay schedule for the casing pipe, so we're about ready to issue a purchase order for that. Projects coming up next. I have 3 that are about ready to go. One is 876 coming from the river to the Conoway Pump Station. I also have WC 872, which is from the Colgate Pump Station to Stonewall, and also up, hopefully, will be the construction of Pump Station O, which will bring water, which is our starting point for the new Atoka pipeline. With that, I can take any questions. Short and sweet.
So are you having any delivery issues regarding the pipe with all the construction projects going on simultaneously?
Some contractors, they're talking about a little bit of a delivery issue, but they're able to work it out with the pipe supplier.
And McKee has 3 projects.
That is correct.
That's a lot. They're able to keep up with that?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Do we expect the installation of the second pipeline to create any issues on the water level for Draper?
Hopefully, it will improve the water levels at Draper.
I know it will once it's installed. I just wondered if there was anywhere in there that we were doing any work that would complicate the flow on the first pipeline.
No, sir.
Thank you.
Well, they're minor. So we have the 3 new pump stations that will be built along the way. And when we physically connect and the interconnects with the existing pump station, we may have to shut it off for short periods of time to make those interconnections, but that's about it.
Okay, thank you.
What we're trying to do is interconnect both lines so that if something happens to one or the other, we can use either or any of the pump stations along the way. So there's minor delays in pumpage.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Larry.
You're welcome.
And then the last presentation, we have PFM here. Dennis Whaley's here to talk about some challenges and some potential recommendations.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Whaley. I'm with PFM. We're the financial advisor to Aquit. This presentation flows perfectly after a discussion of South Canadian and the Atoka pipeline. So we'll start with a little background of why we're here visiting today, and it is how do we increase the capacity of the trust to do CIP projects away from the 3 very large projects that you are facing, and how to award those projects over the next 10-year period. When we look at the current economic environment, we look at inflation factors, as well as all the other things that you are faced here as a very large water and wastewater utility. We've been looking continuously at how to finance projects over the last 10 years, working PFM with Aquit staff to do a financial forecast. And now we're at a point where we need to bring together dollars for the entire CIP, which is very large, and specifically for 3 important projects going forward. Aquit has utilized a commercial paper program, which we've talked about in the past, very successfully, and it has worked very well for the award of projects as well as the financing. That program is now limited to $275 million. And as a reminder, that program's capacity is not only used when you spend dollars, but anytime you appropriate dollars from that program, it also goes against the capacity, so we have limited spending power. Another thing as we move forward is new state law. The state treasurer put out a publication here a few months ago which listed some companies that the treasurer feels have not been fair to energy companies, and those companies cannot do business in the state of Oklahoma at this time. So what we'd like to do is talk to you about financing methods and how we can award projects so that in the future we can meet regulatory requirements, we can meet supply concerns and have supply through 2060, and also keep these projects, 2 of which you just looked at, on schedule. So PFM worked with Aquit staff to come up with strategies to implement a finance plan going forward. We evaluated many options. We met with Aquit staff and talked about all of the short-term financing instruments the market has to offer. And we came back deciding that the most effective short-term instrument is banknotes. And that's because they have flexibility and it allows us to borrow as needed. And what we'll also talk about a little later is how we will roll those banknotes into long-term financing. The projects that we are looking at here for the short-term financing and then rolling long into 35-year debt are the Atoka project, the South Canadian project, and then there's another project called the Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. When we looked at our alternatives, we wanted to make sure that we came up with an optimal strategy that maintained the goals for revenue and financial stability, and also we made sure that we adhered to our financial policies, which are 2 times debt service coverage, as well as 90 days cash on hand.
Dennis, are we on the right slide?
Sir?
Slide, are we on the right slide?
There we go. So once again, the recommendation was to blend short-term financing with long-term takeout. So to look at what our challenge really is, we have a 10-year CIP from 2022 to 2031 of $3.4 billion. The largest individual project is Atoka, which is $925 million, or about 27% of the CIP. You also have Deer Creek at $171 million and South Canadian at $194 million. And then you have a remaining CIP for projects other than those 3 large ones of $2.1 billion. And this is for renewal and replacement, water transmission and distribution, technology issues, asset management, which is proactive management of your infrastructure, as well as wastewater collection and distribution. So in addition to those 3 projects, you also have a lot of things that you need to do to keep the system maintained. So the commercial paper program, it is maxed out at $275 million. The current credit facility with State Street expires in June of 2024, and it's time for us to issue a request for proposal for a new credit provider. So that will be coming in the near future to you. The other thing that we looked at and we thought was very feasible was to issue debt for these major projects that would have a length of 40 years. And the reason for that is all 3 of these major projects have very long lives. The plants, the pipe will all last much longer than 40 years. So it's very reasonable to borrow money for an extended period of time. Our assessment was that we would finance short-term, approximately 5 years, or the length of the project construction in banknotes, pay interest only, and then after that, roll into long-term debt upon completion of the projects, which would be 35-year debt. Where does your capacity come from? Your capacity comes from the fact instead of issuing bonds today, and I'm going to make up numbers, and you issue bonds today and your annual debt service is $20 million because you're paying principal and interest. Instead, you're going to pay interest only, which is $10 million, let's say. You have additional capacity in your debt service to borrow for these other projects that are in that $2.1 billion number that we saw on the previous page. Once we get past, if you looked at the financial forecast, once we get past this period of very intense CIP spending, which is about 2030, 32, we find that the requirements for the CIP kind of drop off and that there is more room to roll in debt service in those outer years and also maintain our coverage and cash requirements. So what is our recommendation? And this comes from our analysis. We want to increase the commercial paper program to $350 million to give the trust more capacity for projects, take about 4 to 5 months to go through that process of preparing, issuing, receiving back responses, evaluating, and then putting that new facility in place. By starting now, we'll be finished well before June of 2024. We also recommend taking out outstanding commercial paper when we see it reaching approximately $100 million. If you take out the outstanding commercial paper, you put dollars back on your credit card that you can spend again when you roll that debt long. Another thing to consider is issuing new money when you do a commercial paper takeout, or reimbursing yourselves for any reimbursement resolutions you might have outstanding. And the reasoning behind that is if you have known costs, if you know in the next 3 months you're going to spend $50 million, it's going out the door, we might as well go ahead and put it in whatever bond deal we're doing now. And that will, so that we don't tie up our commercial paper program immediately. In addition, by just doing one bond sale and putting everything together, you have efficiencies. You don't go out for ratings twice. You don't go out and get bankers twice. But the number is very large. We're looking to create about $1.3 billion of capacity over time. It won't be done tomorrow. It will be done over the next 5 to 7 years to fund these major projects in one or more banknotes. Just to reiterate, we have 3 major projects that we'll be using the banknotes for. Once again, lead time for RFP, solicitation, responses, implementation, 4 to 5 months we're expecting. And one thing that we think you should continue to do, and it has been a very successful program for Aquit, is to utilize the Oklahoma Water Resources Board for their clean water and drinking water programs. Aquit borrows about $60 million a year through those programs. They give you low interest rate financing. The reason we're limited to that is there's limited capacity of the water board program, as well as any project you put in there must meet certain federal requirements. So there's just some things we can go to the water board for. Next steps, we will return to you at a future trust meeting, and I hope in the near future, to talk about the RFPs and get approval to send those out to the market and see what kind of responses we get for a commercial paper credit facility and a banknote program. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dennis?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out that right now we have we have 2 very large projects, another one coming up, and they tie up a lot of our award capacity, but yet the front side of the projects, there's very little pay down. So we don't accumulate that $100 million in our commercial paper to refund it to long-term debt for a long period of time. So we get stymied. We can't award other projects because we've got all of our commercial paper line of credit tied up with these large awards that we just don't spend a lot of money on the front side. And that's where we're at right now. So that's why we're looking at taking those 3 projects. They have big dollar amounts, but they're long-term. Mr. Couch, you pointed that out a few minutes ago. So we need to free up that commercial paper program so we can do a lot more of the smaller projects, the ones that get done quicker, so we can roll that money over more often. And again, a 40-year note rather than a 30-year note on an asset that lasts 100 years just makes more sense. It lowers our debt service coverage ratio, and our debt service, and helps with the actual cost of that money. So that's why we asked Dennis to come in and take a look at, what are we doing and what can we do different to maybe keep going down this path so we can get our projects built sooner than later. Particularly, I'd really like to speed up the Atoka Pipeline project. We really need to get that project done by the end of '28. And right now, the way we're going, it's going to be '29 or later. So we really would like to do some things to enable us to award more of that project out sooner than later. So, thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
And the last two items, Mr. Chairman, one is the status report. Lakes haven't changed much. Hefner's down about 1.5 feet, Draper's about 5 feet. Canton's actually above full pool, and then Atoka and McGee Creek are in pretty good shape as well. And then the financial report, the pro forma, this early in the fiscal year, everything, revenues and expenses are just about on target as expected. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Browning? Seeing none, we'll move on to citizens to be heard. I'm not aware of any citizens to be heard today. Therefore, there's no further business, and we are adjourned.